Coming up on She's one of the world's premier mezzo-sopranos and has recorded over 60 albums. She's received France's highest honor for the arts and performed numerous times at the White House. Modern composers have lined up to write for her, and at a time when most classical artists think of retiring, she is still premiering new roles. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on Interviews, our conversation with 6-time Grammy nominee, opera diva Frederica von Stade. One thing that I've noticed in a lot of people that we've been interviewing is a big, grand start in a long career. Do you find that to usually be true?
A big, grand start?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Really?
I find that careers have a certain momentum, and sometimes the big splash in the beginning is an awful lot of pressure for a new artist, a young artist. And it seems like it's a big splash right in the beginning, but I think very often there's been a lot of preparation that isn't maybe as visible.
So an overnight success might not quite be overnight?
Not quite be overnight. There's, if it's someone who's 19, they've probably been singing or dancing since they were 15 or thinking about it,
Did you have parents that were pushing you in the direction to start?
No, all my family were just a tad mortified by my career. My mother used to get so nervous about my singing that she could barely not even come. It's hard to watch someone you love perform because you can't separate the performer from who you know and love. And so
Right.
I think sometimes it's hard. I had a grandmother, on the other hand, who actually sang with the Houston Grand Opera.
Really?
She came, we did a production of The Seagull here. It was one of the first things I did. And the wonderful composer, Thomas Passettieri, and our director said, let's have Granny be one of the walk-ons. And she was. And opening night, my dressing room here at the Opera House, it was at the Jones Hall then, was knee-deep in roses. And not one of them was for me. They were all for Granny.
Did you come out of a family that appreciated classical music, though?
Not really.
So how do you find the love?
My dad did, but he was killed in the war very early. He was a classical pianist. My mom always loved it, but not in any official capacity. And it was just, I wanted to be a Broadway singer, so I sort of backed into opera, and I'm so grateful that I did, because it's a wonderful, wonderful life, to live with Mozart and Mahler and Rossini.
Now, you talk about loving that music, and you also talk about starting with the Broadway, show tunes and
Show
stuff.
tunes, yeah.
It seems to me such a different discipline. How does one that has an affinity for the showstoppers move into opera? They seem so different.
Well, it's a totally different use of the voice to a certain extent. But a lot of the original Broadway was what they used to call legit singing. It was Mary Martin at the beginning, maybe not Ethel Merman quite as much, but they sang in a very legit operatic way. And you have to remember in those days, in my days, there weren't microphones. Broadway theaters weren't mic'd. And so it was just the power of the voice. Right now, I just finished a tour with Samuel Ramey, and this whole second half of our program was show tunes, and we thought, oh gosh, people who are classical musicians, they won't like this. People have loved it because to deliver those songs in the medium in which they were conceived, Jerome Kern, Richard Rodgers, Cole Porter, Gershwin, they all loved their words. They loved their melodies, but they loved words, and they were great. It's one of our biggest legacies, the lyrics of that time.
Did you ever get to do Broadway? Have you ever done the actual Broadway
No, I've done
stage?
one show, which was here. I did a little night music. No, I never ever did.
Is it anything you miss? I mean, you've played all the great stages of the world, but is there a part that says, Broadway?
Well, I don't think I could do it. I really don't. It's such a different discipline in terms of what it requires, what it asks of you to, 8 shows a week, that type of thing. I'm not so sure I could do it, especially Maybe not now. Although, ask me. Ask me.
If they want, you'll consider it.
I consider it. Yeah.
Take me back though to the beginning. 1970, I guess, was when it all started. With the Met.
I did that. I went on a bet. I went into the Metropolitan Opera auditions, and I knew I had been at the Manouse College of Music and did, had just started to do opera, and I learned a couple of arias, and I went in the Metropolitan Opera auditions not expecting to win, so I had no real investment in it. I, didn't have a incredibly high opinion of my talent. I thought, I loved singing, and it wasn't totally yet where my heart was, and I kept getting called back. So then the stakes get higher. It's, it's like American Idol, So I got an award of money to study, and I studied, and I went back, and in the meantime, I had received a contract. So I started one of my first jobs was the Metropolitan Opera, which was, pretty lucky.
Yeah.
People ask me, they say, what is it for a career? And I said, it's, 50% talent and ability and 50% luck. Yeah. And I truly believe it. When I was first at the Met, I had the most amazing manager, Matthew Epstein, who I've really reconnected with lately and has been one of the great managers of all time because of his incredible devotion to music. And he was my first manager, and then the first pianist I worked with was one of the great musicians of all time, Martin Katz. And so I just had these incredible guardian angels and was sort of propelled along without much conscience.
As you become more popular, as your reputation grows, do you find that auditioning became harder in some way? Was there an expectation now? As you're talking about, you start out, nobody quite knows who you are, but as people now are saying, hey, that's the one we've heard about, for you as a performer, do you sense that?
Oh, I think so. I think, it's interesting to speak to some of my younger colleagues now who are superstars, and there's a terrific period when you're the newcomer that it's very exciting and everything is new, and the expectations are high, but there's also some understanding that there's ways to go, and that's a wonderful time. The hard period is when you are not the newcomer, and then as much as you are sort of built up, then there starts to be lots wrong with you. And it's possible that, it's likely that it's true too. You're in your learning period and you're fitting things on. And then you go through a nice grace period, which I'm in now, which is veteran, So what do we expect? She's old. She's been around.
This is what strikes me very funny about you, is that I read all these things where you talk about, you're older now, you're taking it easy and all this stuff. You're still premiering new roles. You're doing things that people in the beginning of their career are doing. Why do you still do that? You could coast on a lot of roles that you've done in the past.
No, the roles that I did mainly were 15-year-olds, and trust me, I can't do that anymore. I've just been so lucky. I really have. I've had my guardian angels of Matthew and a wonderful young manager that I have now, and great musicians around me, and I think a lot of it is just really Jake Heggie, who I know you've had on your program, it feels almost like a son to me. I adore him, and he's believed in me and written music for me, and I've premiered some of his things. It's been a terrific good fortune, and one of the things I am thinking about and have been thinking of with the help of this great friend Matthew is how to leave the business. And I really want to leave it in a kind of doing benefits for some of the companies that have been really good to me, like this company, in their honor, as a kind of thank you. Thank you for what I've had. I never expected to have.
Is there a point, though, an age, a moment, as a opera singer that you have to say, okay, enough, or can you continue the career?
I think you can continue to a certain point. The boys can go on a lot longer, it seems, because I think women play, young ingenue roles, or they move into the mother and witches roles.
The character roles.
Character roles. And if you want to do that, I'm beginning to see that I think it is a little bit of a young people's sport, and I love it. with all my heart. I love hearing the young voices. I love the camaraderie. I love the preparation. I love the stagehands. I love the orchestra backstage, everything. But there's a moment when you start feeling like you're dressed in your daughter's prom dress, that you are a little too old to have a bow across,
right.
The back of your waist. And that's how I feel. Now, many of my colleagues have gone on enormously successfully, practically till 70. I don't think I will. I know I'll got a couple more years, and I'm having great fun doing these, I call them my senior PGA tours. And they're fun because we do have something to do, and I love concerts. But I feel that, that the time has come, the walrus said, and it's soon. It's soon.
I read a quote where you were quoting someone else, actually, Marilyn Horne, talking about what singing means to the person, as opposed to it being their life or making their life. How do you see yourself as a performer, as a singer? How much of your life does that take up? It
takes up a lot, but it really got pushed into a back seat when I had my children. And it is there. Once you have children and have family, there is just, for me, there's nothing more. And it's become a way to take care of my children as well. And I still have this blind passion for singing and performing that I've always had. But I've always had a pull back to it. And I've been lucky that I've been able to be with my kids and be around my family. But even now, being away is hard. I have a new little bonus granddaughter at home. My daughters are doing exciting things, and that's the pull, is when my very own daughters have their babies. Oh my goodness, they will, have to lock their doors. And I feel blessed in that.
Were you always this balanced? Were you always this understanding of career is career and family is family? Or was there a time you made sacrifices or made mistakes that you think?
Oh my gosh, it's never in balance. I'm totally not balanced at all. And it never is. I mean, it's always the pull for a performer who has children. It's interesting. There was a wonderful old doctor in England, whose name I can't remember now, but he analyzed the connection between a singer and their voice. Not especially opera singers, but any singer and their voice. And the only connection, human connection, greater than a performer and their voice, their instrument, is that of mother and child.
Really?
It's that. It is. I mean, I have friends who have woken up from operations not knowing what was removed, and in the recovery room they're going, yeah, is the voice still there? Is it okay?
Yeah.
It's that great a connection, and it's sort of, you have to forgive it, but you have to kind of delight in it too. That we've been, and many of us have been given a great voice, many more actually today than people know, because there's not enough singing in schools and not enough singing in all of our lives so that people can really enjoy it.
Can you be taught to be a great singer, or is it a gift?
I think the instrument is a gift. I think the ear is a gift. But you can teach a lot. And one of the interesting difficulties of our profession, especially singers, is that if you have a good voice and a good ear, and you've never sung a note of music, in a month you could be taught to sing an aria. That couldn't happen with a pianist or a violinist, because they're dependent on muscle memory, and if you haven't trained as a pianist or a violinist or a dancer from an early age, there's just so much you can accomplish at after a certain point. But a singer can do it, so that with a certain amount of basic talent, they can. I did it. I had never heard of Mozart Ambroise Thomas, and I learned an aria in a couple of weeks and sang it for an audition, and got into a music school. I had not heard of Mahler. I had not heard of Berlioz or any of those composers. The only opera I heard was on the radio when my mom played it, and it's the difficulty is then training yourself to take the baby steps you need to take. Right. To actually develop your voice.
I heard a rumor you still take voice lessons. Is that true?
Oh, yes. And there's meant to be I work with a wonderful lady in Oakland who I adore, who has such a pure spirit. I gave myself to 60 to figure out exactly what I want to do with my voice, but I've had to extend that a few years.
So what is it exactly you wanted to do with your voice?
Well, I think to really use my instrument the way instrumentalists do. I would love to. I have not been able to, and I think I came closer than I gave myself credit for when I was younger. And now with some seniority, you have to think a little bit more about production. And I'm always learning things, always. And you do learn because the instrument is growing up or growing older with your body, so it always needs readjustment.
Are there performances you look back on and remember as, and you might even have, but wish that there were recordings of it, moments where you thought all the elements just came together perfectly?
No, I'm far too critical. I think that listening to your voice and observing your performance is one of the most dangerous things that you can do as a performer, because it means that you are sort of monitoring it as you're presenting it, and that takes a certain amount of concentration. And I've had the happiest times when I have not monitored it and have been able to totally concentrate on what I'm doing. Now, that's the ideal. One doesn't come that close, because I don't know, one day I was doing a performance and this man keeled over in the middle of it, and he had a heart attack.
In the audience?
In the audience. And he was all right. I'm happy to say.
You didn't kill him.
But of course, you think, what was I doing? What did I sing? What did I do? What, you hated the music? Or, there's things going on around you and you're aware of them, and you see, we face the public totally, and you see people nodding off or looking bored, or so that you are aware of that. But the more concentrated you are on what you're supposed to do, the happier you are.
Really? Do you sing for yourself, or is it for the audience?
All day long I sing. I love to sing. And
sing on the treadmill in the morning, I
sing
heard?
On the treadmill. In fact, I was at the treadmill where I'm staying here, and the ladies from, when the offices nearby came and closed all the doors. So I got a pretty bad review there.
Yeah, that wasn't a good one.
That wasn't so good.
A few years back, I'm assuming at some point you were sitting at your home and either the phone rang or you turned on the TV and you saw yourself being referred to on the series Northern Exposure. When a moment like that happens, is that like a wake-up call that, wait a minute, I'm in the world of pop culture now. I'm a name that people are recognizing.
Oh, it's, in our business, we have some lovely exposures, but they're not of the nature that someone like Madonna is. Right. I was lucky enough to do the Emmys this year. I sang the da 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 with, for Star Trek, and I had the time of my life, and television people are so nice to us,
Because we know you have the real talent.
No, it's because we do something different, and we are totally in awe of what you do. So you start from this place of sort of mutual admiration and respect, and it was like being, a TV star for the day.
So people don't know what I'm talking about. Those back on Northern Exposure, there was a character obsessed with you, the performer, and it was worked in. And I know that in the opera world you have a name and a reputation, but to cross over into something so pop culture-y is really kind of, I think, a kick for someone in your business.
It's a total kick. And then sometimes if people recognize you, it's a big kick too,
Opening the Olympics, how about that?
That was fun, because you can't help be part of the Olympics and not feel this kind of national pride.
Yeah.
And I mean, every time I sing in Washington, I keep practically saluting buildings because I love Washington so much. And it means I grew up in Washington, and it means a lot to me. You know, the nation's capital, and it's great. It makes me proud. So being part of the Olympics was a big thrill.
Preparing for the Olympics, in my mind, that seems so massive and so much is going on that you'd kind of get lost in the shuffle of everything. Do they take care of you at something, or is it get out there, sing, you're going to be on at this moment?
Oh no, they take terrific care.
Do they?
Really, in everything I've done that's for television, it's been, oh yes, now come over here, and it's 2 steps, and watch that, and you know, and people.
So
I had this last time. I had
shuffle.
my makeup sort of spray painted on. It was fantastic. It was like this airbrush. They took away all this. It was. I had a ball.
Yeah.
No, they're just adorable. Really wonderful, wonderful. I've always had a great experience doing television. I don't know if I ever did it. My great regret, I have to say, is never doing a Muppet show. You know,
Really?
I would have loved to do the Muppets. I love the Muppets.
Well, maybe there's still a Sesame Street for you there.
Maybe,
You know?
maybe, yeah.
Performing at the White House. Does that change than performing at any theater? Do you feel the sense of difference?
Oh, totally,
Why
totally.
is that?
It's because you're singing for the president of your country, and I've sung for a number of presidents, and I've been to the White House several times, and oh, I just walk in the door, and I'm thrilled and excited. I sang a lot for President and Mrs. Reagan, and they were just adorable. She was just so sweet to us always.
Yeah.
And for President Bush, I just loved it. And I felt the same thing. You're walking through the White House with heads of state, and you know, and they're live, and they're sitting there. They're not the best public because they're exhausted. You know, they're running countries, and you're sitting there, sort of singing a little tune. But oh my gosh, I'm just bursting with pride when I'm there.
There are people who I think seem to forget the fact and get caught up in the politics of it all and forget the pageantry of it, the importance of performing for the head of state as opposed to the political debate going on.
Yeah, no, we're not. You know, opera singers are rarely politicians. And I think that you sing for your country, and it's whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And it means a lot. It means a lot. It's we're lucky to have the White House. We're lucky to have Washington. We're lucky to have the interest in it, you know. And there's lots. I'm about to sing for Memorial Day. I'm so excited, you know. And I had not been to the Capitol in years. I did a benefit for Kennedy Center, and you know, go into the Senate and sit down at Senator Kennedy's desk and go through what, you know, see where he sits and thinks. Yeah. It can't help but mean a lot.
Do you still get, I'm assuming you get excited with all of these things. Is there a part of you that's jaded at all to the public world, or is it still a fascination?
No, it's still a fascination. I don't feel jaded. I love meeting people, and you meet people from all different backgrounds in my business, and it's always interesting. You know, people who have had different lives. And one of the big things that impressed me deeply lately was I did a benefit in New Orleans, and I asked a cab driver to take me to the 9th Ward, and I was just horrified. You know, and this was a man who is a bank manager and was on partial payroll, but just couldn't stand not doing anything for 9 months. So he took a job as a cab driver, and you know, and I love New Orleans, and I've sung there many times, and to see that country, to see that city and so compromised is, you know, was disheartening.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
And being that we come out of Houston too, the influx.
Well, Houston has done a
from
lot.
Yeah.
Houston has really set a very good example of what can be done to help people, you know.
Changing gears real quick before we run out of time, music education for children.
My favorite subject.
I'm happy we got to it.
Yes,
then.
I am so pro anything that can be done. And I live in California, and I've done a lot to try and help. We do, there's something called the Alameda Education Foundation, which is local for me, and we put on benefits every year to raise extra money. It's so important, and I'm thinking of something which I'm going to misquote, but your beautiful Manil collection here. There's something that it's related to what Mrs. Manil said, but it's, it is through art that you get to truth and bring it to the people. And how important is that? And not every child is a scientist or a mathematician. I'm not, and I had a great life in music, and that whole creative spirit, we need it more than ever. I work with kids in where I live in Oakland, and I do teach singing to 5 and 6 year olds, and we put on little plays for their parents in this daycare center. And the discoveries I've made in working with these kids are just extraordinary, and I feel every musician who's out there needs to turn a great deal of their energy at some point in their career toward music education. I admire Yo-Yo Ma for all he's done many, and it doesn't take that much. Just an appearance here, funding, an awareness. It's so important for what's going to happen to us as a nation if we don't, not just music education, but education. Right. It's everything. It can change the course of, human nature, education, I think.
Well, I'm going to tell you we are exactly out of time at this moment. I'm going to thank you for your appearance here.
Thank you.
Frederica von Stade.
Thank you.
To order a transcript, call 866-652-3378 or send $6.95 to the address on your screen. Please include the name of the guest.